Ready to travel back in time. We're going deep into early 20th century Mongolia today
I love it.
with Roy Chapman Andrews' book, Across-Mongolian-Plains.
Yeah, his 1921 expedition.
His own account.
It's amazing what makes this book so interesting is
Yeah.
it's not just some, dry scientific report. It's like Andrews takes you with him
Yeah.
on this crazy journey
Yeah.
through a Mongolia that's like right on the edge of change.
Yeah.
It's like this place that's still holding on to its nomadic traditions,
Uh-huh.
but the modern world's like creeping in.
Yeah, it really is like stepping into a time capsule.
Yeah.
Like from his descriptions of the Gobi Desert to like these little glimpses into the lives of the Mongol people, it really does bring the era to life.
Totally.
I gotta admit though, when I was reading about Andrews running into motor cars in the Gobi, I kind of laughed.
It's such a funny image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, here's Andrews, right?
Yeah.
This, like, fearless explorer venturing into what he thinks is this pristine wilderness.
Right.
And he's met with the sound of engines.
Yeah.
It really shows how fast the world was changing back then and how even the most remote places
Yeah.
weren't safe from technology.
It makes you wonder what Andrews would think of Mongolia today.
I know, right?
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
let's set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned Mongolia being like on the edge of change.
Yeah.
What was going on historically that made this period so important?
Well, by 1921, the Mongol Empire was long gone.
Right.
Outer Mongolia had just declared independence from China
Okay.
in 1911, fueled by, problems in China and some help from Russia.
Right.
But China wasn't giving up so easily.
I bet.
There's this really interesting document you gave me, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, a memorial to the Chinese president from General Shutseng.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
He was really against Mongolian autonomy.
Yeah. What were his arguments against it?
Basically, Shu said that Mongolia couldn't govern itself. He painted this picture of a nation that was stagnating, vulnerable to Russian influence,
Okay.
and even threatened by Buryat tribes
Right.
who wanted a pan-Mongolian state.
Wow.
It really shows you the geopolitical situation Andrews was walking into.
So Andrews wasn't just exploring a physical landscape,
No.
but also like a political and cultural one, too.
Exactly.
Full of tension and uncertainty.
Totally.
It makes his journey even more interesting, don't you think?
Oh, for sure.
Like he was seeing the end of an era.
Yeah, and that tension between the traditional and the modern
Right.
is like a recurring theme in the book. You see it in his own expedition, too. Like,
Yeah.
he's trying to capture that old spirit of exploration,
Right.
but he's still relying on those modern motor cars.
To get across the Gobi.
Yeah.
And those cars gave them trouble.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Yeah, he talks about breakdowns, dust storms, always needing spare parts.
It's true.
Makes you appreciate how tough those early explorers had to be.
And how much they relied on mechanics.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Can you imagine being stuck in the Gobi Desert,
Oh God.
hundreds of miles from help,
Yeah.
and your car breaks down?
No, thank you.
But even with those challenges, Andrews was amazed by the landscape.
Yeah.
He describes standing on this mountain pass, and the view was so vast and rugged, he compared it to a stupendous relief map.
And he also talks about crossing this crazy flat plain that felt like an ocean,
Yes.
with his car feeling like a tiny boat in a sea of grass.
Those descriptions really make you feel the Gobi scale.
They do.
And then
Yeah.
in this huge emptiness, he meets the Mongol people,
Right.
who in their own way
Yeah.
were just as amazing as the landscape itself.
And I'm guessing their lifestyle was pretty different from what Andrews was used to.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Andrews was struck by their resilience, their self-sufficiency, their connection to the environment. He talks about their yurts, these portable homes that were perfect for their nomadic lifestyle,
Yeah.
and their use of argol or dried dung for fuel. Wow.
In a land with no trees.
Yeah.
And he was fascinated by how important dogs were to them.
Uh-huh.
Not just as pets, but as protectors, too.
It's so interesting how different cultures adapt to their environments.
It is.
You mentioned Andrews being fascinated by the Mongol people.
Yeah.
What were his impressions of them like as people?
He really admired them.
Yeah.
He calls them full-blooded and virile,
Uh-huh.
and he loved how frank and welcoming they were,
Okay.
especially compared to the Chinese,
Right.
who he found more guarded and obsessed with money.
It sounds like he saw the Mongols as representing a way of life that was disappearing.
I think so.
But let's get back to the journey.
Okay.
They start in Palgan,
Right.
which was basically the gateway to Mongolia at the time.
Yeah, Kalgan was the last bit of civilization before the Mongolian plains.
And from there,
yeah,
they head out on this journey that takes them across huge distances through crazy terrain to the heart of Mongolian culture.
It's an amazing story.
It really captures a moment in time before things changed forever.
I'm excited to dive into it.
Me too. Yeah. So they're crossing these huge plains in these like rickety motor cars, battling the elements, and finally they get to Urga.
Capital.
Yeah. What was Andrew's first impression of the city?
Oh, you can like feel the excitement in his words as he describes Urga.
Yeah.
He calls it this fascinating mix of Russian, Mongolian, and Chinese cultures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's this city where you have modern things like telephones and filing cabinets.
Right.
But they exist alongside traditional yurts.
Huh.
It's like that old and new clashing right before his eyes.
Like those old photos of New York in the early 1900s, you know, with horse-drawn carriages and the first cars.
Yeah, like a snapshot of a world changing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Andrews highlights those contrasts. Like on one hand, you have the Hututu,
the living Buddha,
right, with his palaces right up against the Bogdal, the sacred mountain.
Oh, yeah. Shows that spiritual side of Mongolian culture.
But then right next to that, you have the Manchu-built prism.
Yeah.
A reminder of Mongolia's past.
It's like the city is that push and pull between old and new.
It really is.
And Andrew sees that push and pull, not just in the city itself, but in the lives and beliefs of the people.
Right, like when he describes that Buddhist ceremony at the temple.
Oh, yeah. He talks about how they bathe their faces in holy water.
Yeah, and they prostrate themselves in front of that giant Buddha statue. And they even collect sacred dirt off the floor.
It's incredible.
It's like their faith is so powerful.
But what's interesting is that this reverence for life exists with this totally different view of death.
Yeah, he talks about it so matter-of-factly.
Right.
It's like, here's this culture with this rich spiritual life, and then death is just like an inconvenience.
He describes this cultural stigma about dying inside.
Yeah.
He tells this story
about a Mongol husband who moves his dying wife out of their yurt.
Out of the yurt?
Because she couldn't die there.
Wow. That's hard to imagine.
I know, and then there's that whole thing about leaving the dead for the dogs and wolves.
Oh, yeah, he talks about the raven being called the Mongol's coffin.
It's a reminder of how different cultures view death.
It's easy to judge, but it's important to remember that these practices have deep roots.
You're right.
Yeah.
And it's these observations that make Andrews challenge us to look beyond our own culture.
And try to understand the world from other perspectives.
Exactly.
Andrews also has some interesting things to say about women in Mongol society.
Like their clothes?
Yeah.
Especially their big boots.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just fashion. It was practical. They used those boots to carry stuff.
In their boots.
Yeah, because their clothes didn't have pockets.
Makes sense with their nomadic lifestyle.
Totally. They had to carry their belongings with them.
Yeah.
But as fascinating as Urga was, Andrews couldn't stay put.
Of course not.
He wanted to see the real wilderness.
So they head out?
Yeah, with a caravan of horses and carts.
Wow.
To reach this village ruled by Sain Noin Khan.
Okay.
But their trip takes a turn.
What happened?
They found the hunting grounds empty.
Oh, no.
Andrews blames it on overhunting by the Mongols.
So even back then, human activity was impacting nature.
It's a reminder of that balance between humans and the natural world.
Even in a place like Mongolia.
Exactly.
So what did they do?
They had to turn back after 5 days.
5 days.
They did have some luck trapping marmots, though.
Oh, okay.
And Andrews noticed something interesting.
What's that?
He was way better at trapping marmots than the locals, and he realized it was because of the Russian-made traps they were using.
The traps weren't good.
They weren't great.
Wow. So even small differences in technology could have a big impact.
Totally.
It makes you think about how resourceful they had to be. They couldn't just order a new trap on Amazon.
Exactly.
So they set up a hunting camp.
Yeah, on the plains south of Urga.
Okay.
And this is where Andrews really gets to practice his hunting.
He talks about learning to shoot from a moving car.
Yeah.
That sounds hard.
He talks about his struggles at first, wasting a lot of ammo.
But he was determined.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's that amazing encounter with the gazelles.
Thousands of them.
Yeah.
Stretching as far as he could see.
He describes it like this wave of animals.
It must have been incredible.
Like a sea of movement.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the ground shaking.
It's a reminder of nature's power and abundance.
But also its fragility.
Yeah, just a few days earlier, they found those empty hunting grounds.
Right.
It shows how easily that balance can be disrupted.
Yeah.
So they keep going, and they end up back near the Turin Monastery.
That religious landmark?
Yeah, they camp nearby.
Okay.
And they watch all the activity around the well.
It must have been a welcome sight after days on the plains,
Especially in that dry landscape.
where water was so precious.
And there Andrews meets Seren Dorchi.
The famous Mongol hunter.
Yeah.
He becomes his hunting buddy.
Yeah, their relationship really shows you the Mongol hospitality. Seren Dorchi's wife welcomes Andrews into their home.
That's so nice.
And Andrews is drawn to their warmth and generosity.
It's like a human connection that goes beyond culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And through these interactions, Andrews learns more about the Mongol way of life.
Oh, that's cool.
He even finds himself treating the sick and injured.
Really?
Yeah, but he says the lamas get all the credit.
For their prayers.
Right?
It's like traditional beliefs and modern medicine coming together.
It is.
It shows that even with science, faith and tradition are still powerful.
So Andrews is impressed by the Mongols.
Yeah, their resilience, their connection to nature, their hospitality.
What about Seren Dorchi?
What was he like?
Andrew says he was a true outdoorsman, a skilled hunter. Yeah.
And a man who lived by his own code. He sounds like a real character.
I bet a guy like that wouldn't follow all the rules.
You got that right.
Oh, yeah.
Andrews tells this story
Okay.
about Seren Dorchi breaking the hunting ban on the Bogdol.
The sacred mountain.
Yeah, he gets thrown in jail.
Wow. Talk about a clash between freedom and authority.
What happened to him?
Yeah.
Well, luckily, he got out because of Duke Lubitsin Yangtsen,
Okay.
who we'll talk about later.
Okay.
It shows you how important connections were in Mongol society.
Mm-hmm.
But even a famous hunter like Seren Dorchi
Yeah.
wasn't above the law.
Right.
At least not completely.
It sounds like he did things his own way.
He did.
Did Andrews ever go hunting with him?
He did.
Cool.
And Andrews loved it.
Yeah.
He talks about joining Seren Dorchi and some other Mongols on this hunting trip that lasted for days.
Wow.
They lived off the land.
That must have been so different from Andrew's normal life.
It was totally different.
Yeah. They hunted with bows and arrows.
Wow.
They ate traditional Mongol food.
Like what?
Even boiled animal guts.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I could handle that.
No.
But Andrews talks about it all with this sense of wonder and respect for the Mongols.
It's like he was going back in time,
Yeah.
experiencing this ancient connection between humans and nature.
And he learns fast.
Okay.
He even impresses Seren Dorchi with his shooting.
Oh, nice.
They hunt a stag, and you can tell Andrews is proud
Yeah.
to be helping the group survive.
Yeah.
It's a long way from his scientific expeditions,
Right.
but it really changed him.
Yeah, like he found a different side of himself.
Out in the Mongolian wilderness.
It wasn't just the hunting that got to him, though, right?
Right.
It was the whole Mongol way of life.
Yeah, their self-reliance,
Uh-huh.
not caring about material things,
Yeah.
their strong relationships.
I feel like he's comparing that to the Chinese culture he knew,
Yeah.
which was more about community and money. Like, maybe he saw the Mongols as representing something pure
Yeah, something that was getting lost.
in the modern world.
He might be romanticizing them a bit,
Yeah.
but I think he really admired their ability to live in such a harsh environment.
Makes sense.
But let's move on to the next part of their journey.
Okay.
After their time with Seren Dorchi,
Uh-huh.
they head to the Turelsha region.
Okay.
It's totally different from the plains they were used to.
That's like a whole new world.
Yeah, Andrews talks about the Turelsha Valley
Okay.
with its forests and valleys and hills.
It sounds so peaceful.
Yeah, it's a big change from the Gobi.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's relieved to be there.
Does he keep hunting?
He does.
Yeah.
He talks about hunting roebuck there,
Uh-huh.
and he sees a Mongol field meat.
I bet that was something to see.
But this part of the trim has a darker side, too.
Oh, yeah.
He runs into the musk deer,
Uh-huh.
which was hunted for its musk for perfume.
They were already being hunted a lot back then.
Yeah, he talks about how hard they were to find, living high up in the mountains.
But people still hunted them.
They did.
You can tell he's worried about it,
It's another example of how humans were affecting nature.
even in these far-off places.
And it's something he thinks about more as they're leaving Mongolia.
Right. He starts to think about Mongolia's future.
He sees its potential
Uh-huh.
for development,
Uh-huh.
for modernization.
To become powerful.
But he's worried about what that will do to the traditional Mongol way of life.
Because he's seen that clash firsthand
Yeah.
between tradition and modernity.
He's basically asking, can Mongolia progress without losing its identity?
That's a question a lot of places are asking today.
It's a timeless question.
So they leave Mongolia.
Yeah.
Are they done with their adventures?
Not quite.
Okay.
On their way back to China,
Uh-huh.
they stop at the Tongling,
Okay.
the eastern tombs of the Manchu emperors.
Oh, wow.
It's a place full of history and beauty.
I remember reading about that.
Andrews is really moved by it.
Yeah, he talks about how impressive the tombs are.
How nature and design come together.
But he also sees something there that makes him mad.
The destruction of the forests.
He sees the Manchu farmers clearing the land,
Yeah.
burning all those trees.
It makes him furious.
It's like what we worry about today.
With deforestation.
And unsustainable practices.
It shows you these problems aren't new.
And it's not just the trees he's worried about, right?
Right. He's worried about the animals that live there.
The Tunling was home to so many different animals.
Bears, leopards, even monkeys.
And he's afraid they'll all disappear.
Because they're losing their homes.
It's another reminder of how everything's connected.
And what happens when we mess with that balance?
So the expedition ends.
Yeah.
And Andrew says goodbye to the Tunling.
It's sad.
Knowing that this amazing place is disappearing.
It is.
It's a bittersweet ending to this incredible journey.
What did you think of Across-Mongolian-Plains?
That's a book that sticks with you.
It does.
Andrews captures the landscape, the people,
the challenge.
the changes happening in Mongolia.
Yeah.
And he asks questions that are still important today.
About progress and preservation.
Hmm?
About modernization and tradition.
Right.
About protecting our world.
What's the biggest takeaway for our listener?
I think it's about perspective.
Okay.
Andrews wants us to see the world through other people's eyes.
To understand different ways of life.
And to remember that our choices have consequences.
That affect everyone.
And everything.
It's a powerful message.
We should all think about it.
So to our listener,
yeah,
we leave you with this.
Okay.
Andrew saw Mongolia changing.
What would he think of it now?
How has it changed over the last 100 years?
What can we learn from his experiences?
As we face our own challenges today.
Think about those questions.
Learn more about Mongolia.
And consider the role you play
in shaping our planet's future.
Because sometimes the best part of exploring
isn't finding all the answers,
but discovering new questions.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.